Welcome to the High Performance Disciple podcast. My name is Gareth Morgan, and my goal is to help you close the gap between your God-given potential and your daily performance. What I do is I explore the explosive combination of timeless spiritual principles and high performance practices that will enable you to take control, to be courageous, and to release the greatness that is in you. This conversation is designed to help high achieving, high impact leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, and pioneers turn fear into faith, confusion into clarity, frustration into focus, and stress into strategy. If you enjoy what you hear, I would love for you to like it, to subscribe, to comment, and share it with others that you believe in. Here's today's conversation. Welcome to another episode of the High Performance Disciple podcast. In this episode, we're going to continue at the event that I ran called Different and unpacking 10 keys to a different future. I'm encouraging the audience and now you, as you listen in, to really get a vision that is bigger maybe than the future that you currently can see. A future that is not just going to be enjoyed by you and your family, but by generations to come. I believe it's this kind of question that truly taps into our inner potential, that potential to contribute and to give a legacy that is truly going to be transformative, that we will enjoy, but others in future generations will be thankful for. The reason that we get up each day, that purpose, that passion, that drive to truly make a difference, I really believe is in you. Let's see that come out. And I hope these keys that we're looking at to releasing that different future that's in you will really challenge you and get you thinking. I hope you enjoy this episode. The future frustrates to produce necessary change. You see, if the future is hidden in you, how does the future get out of you? One of the ways that the future gets out of you is that if the future is here, at the core of you, which is your seed, which is the spirit of a person, then what happens is the frustration that you experience on a day-by-day basis as life happens to you, and you feel the emotional turmoil of life happening to you, I want to encourage you right now, because very often we interpret pain and negative emotions as the reasons why something isn't going to happen. So we draw conclusions based upon feelings, which is speculation. In other words, we have our own media agency, I'm not going to name any names, that creates our own fake news, our own clickbait, and we click on it constantly. We fall for it every single time, and we believe exactly what we read on Soul FM. And on Soul FM, sometimes they're playing the same records over and over again. Some of those records were put there since childhood. And it's time to change the tune. Nobody's forcing that tune to be played. Nobody can take away what happened to you. Neither should you forget what happened to you, because as you're going to discover today, it's a key part of your story. But what needs to change is we need to understand the frustration that I carry is the future trying to manifest. You see, what then has to happen, if you're going to live from the inside out, which again we'll talk a lot about today, when I start to realize, wow, the future is hidden in me, not from me, that frustration, therefore, is the future trying to get my attention, then what happens is it unleashes a fresh focus. You see, if you don't then have focus, what happens is your frustration produces fear. And fear derails you. You lose sight of hope and suddenly you feel stuck. Anybody ever felt stuck? Raise your hand. Trapped, yeah? And then what that does then is once you get the focus, it informs function. You see, the exciting part of that then is that becomes potentially a business. That then potentially becomes a project. It becomes a product. It becomes a person that I'm alive to help and a pain to alleviate. All of a sudden, all the negative things that I'd rather sideline and push to the side actually become key clues to the future that's trying to get out. Future change unlocks discipline. Future change unlocks discipline. You see, the moment you give yourself permission, based upon the belief that the future is hidden inside of you, what happens then is you start to believe that future, it starts to ask some big questions of today. 5 years ago, this week, we moved to London. We were living in Nottinghamshire. Some of the people here today from Nottinghamshire, let's give a good cry for Nottinghamshire. Hey up my duck. Hey up my duck. Excellent. In fact, as we get talking, you might hear my accent go back to what it was. And my becomes ooh. And I remember as I started to kind of think about what I felt I carried inside of me, as I realized I could start to see a bigger picture that wasn't for me to do everything. It was just the fact I could see it and I needed to create a conversation. And I said to Leanne in 2012, this was 2 years before we moved, I said I always believed that I would live in Newark-on-Trent, which is the town in Nottinghamshire I'm from. Always lived there, never saw myself outside of there. Loved Newark, still love Newark. And I used to walk around early in the morning thinking this is an amazing town, I love this town. But then there's this irritation in me saying, you've got to move. You've got to move. Then frustrations started to happen. Frustrations that became confusing. Because when you start to implement your vision in one place, but then actually you're required to move to another place, you start to experience friction. And if you start to interpret that friction without vision, you'll come up with the wrong conclusion. You'll come up with the wrong conclusion about places and people. Sometimes the people that we disengage from relationally because of friction was actually simply because the futures were different, not because they were bad people. And what I realized then was that I said to Leanne, I said, I've got this feeling that we're going to move to London. And she said, do you know what? That's really weird. I've had exactly the same thought. And then suddenly we realized, wow, something is trying to get out of us. But then we were like, well, what is it? You know, and we were leading a church at the time, still in church leadership today. But it wasn't simply, oh, you've got to go to London to create church. Still be involved. I'm a person of faith. It's a key part of my motivation in life. But I knew it was something more than that. And I said to Leanne, I said, all I know is we've got to go to Greenwich, and that there were two places in the future that I could see. I could see Greenwich, London, and Greenwich, New York. And I'd never been to New York or America or anything in the States. I said, I could just see these places. And I just said, I know it's Greenwich, the UK, because we've got to position ourselves at the crossroads of the world. And I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure church will be there, but it isn't church per se that's driving it. And I just knew, just on that simple belief alone, that we needed to respond. But how does that connect to this point? Because London is flipping expensive. and when you're in Nottinghamshire and house prices are on the rise and you think everything's expensive there, but then all of a sudden you start looking at houses, you're thinking, what, we're going to live in a matchbox, you know? And that we'd have to rent that, you know? And I was thinking, wow. All of a sudden, discipline in finance kicks in. Because it remains fantasy unless your vision imposes demand today. It's about then taking responsibility for my health, because one thing I knew, age 25, by the time I'm 40, I've got to be fit in order to do what I believe that I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what that is. I know it's not running marathons, although I did my first half marathon this year, very proud of that, and my last. But I knew I've got to be healthy. I've got to be strong. I knew that my marriage has got to be strong. Because when that comes under stress, I've got to invest now. Because there's no good trying to make a withdrawal later on when the investment hasn't been made. You see, that's what happens is future change unlocks discipline. Because self-discipline is self-imposed standards for the sake of a greater goal. Sometimes discipline gets a hard time. Ooh, hate the word discipline. Hate the word. All it is self-imposed standards for the sake of a greater goal. Well, I really hope you enjoyed those principles that we shared. And of course, we're going to carry on with those principles in our next episode. But I hope it's getting you thinking. I hope it's encouraging you and stimulating your imagination to think bigger, to think different. I really believe the future's in you. And if we can just ask the right questions, then we can coax out that dream that goes beyond just those that you love, but actually reaches into places and spaces to touch people's lives that right now you don't know who they are, but they're waiting for the solution that's in you to come out. And I believe not only people alive today, but people in future generations need you to deliver that answer. So until next time, come on, let's take control. Let's be courageous and let's release the greatness that's in you. I hope today's episode was helpful to you. You can get more by subscribing to my channel, and I have more content and tools that can help you on your journey if you'd like to head over to garethmorgan.tv. Remember, today and every day you are a champion, and there is more in you than you think.